is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The root cause of migration is a federal government that has legalized an invasion into this country. That's the root cause. And you talk about treason, I can tell you right now, I consider that treason against American citizens. This has been an invasion in this country, and the cartels have benefited by tens of billions of dollars. Mass deportations cannot happen fast enough. Not fast enough. Not for the cartels, terrorists, gangs, and criminals that have made billions and billions of dollars, and children have been the biggest victims of it. Human trafficking is a $150 billion a year industry. In 2021, Georgia had one of the highest number of cases per capita that were reported through trafficking hotlines. Approximately 1/3 of all human trafficking victims are children. The United States is one of the top destinations for human trafficking and is among the largest consumers of child sex. That is sick. The average age of entry into the commercial sex market is 12 years old. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have been complicit, just as you testified, Mr. Carroll, in making the United States federal government the world's largest child sex trafficking organization in modern history. My God, what has happened to our country? This administration has adhered to our enemies and allowed cartels and coyotes to make around $13 billion a year in human trafficking alone. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Mayorkas have allowed over 500,000 unaccompanied alien children to cross our border. As Mr. Carroll testified, the probability that thousands of these alien children are being raped at this very moment is 100%. Ms. Rodas, you further highlighted that when we learned in February 23 that 85,000 of these children were missing, zero action was taken to rescue the children, and zero action was taken to prevent other children from being lost in slave labor, commercial sex, organ harvesting, and other unspeakable evils. I don't care if the organ harvesting happened in Mexico. If the buyers are in the United States, we got a serious problem. And consequently, more than a year later, in July 2024, we learned that this administration has lost track of more than 320,000 children. How on earth do we do that? The failures, that's how. These are the results of Democrat policies. The Democrats want to claim moral superiority and accuse us of family separation policies. Well, they are the party of child sex trafficking, and the American people spoke out about that on the election. Surrendering control of our border to the cartels, expediting vetting processes, and refusing to share data with law enforcement so they can dismantle the trafficking infrastructure are the policies of Democrats. More than 100 children being released to the same address in Austin, Texas, is a policy of the Democrats. Mr. Carroll, in your documentary, What is Treason?, there's some very heart-wrenching claims about the trafficking of unaccompanied children. Several of the most disturbing claims we heard are religious organizations and NGOs are operating as co-conspirators. These organizations are used as the pipeline to traffic the children to the end abuser in many instances. Other disturbing claims made include pedophilia rings, purchasing children, as well as organ harvesting. Can you please talk in specifics about the evidence and finding of your research that have led you to these conclusions?
That's a great question, because the federal government does not have the ability, the capacity, or the manpower to move 30 million people that have crossed the border in the last 4 years into America. They can't. So who do they partner with? The federal government partner with the NGOs, all cloaked under the umbrella of religion.
And they're paying them with American tax dollars, by the way.
We are talking about, this is Joe Biden's numbers and statistics. In 4 years, he will have spent over $700 billion on illegal immigrants to surpass $1 trillion. That's the range that we have. I'm telling you, these NGOs are making tens and hundreds of billions of dollars, and they are the traffickers.
But Mr. Carroll, can you talk specifically about the organ harvesting? Where do we find evidence of this? Who do we need to talk to?
Well, this is just like somebody says, well, show me where the drug cartels are. They're not showing you where they are. The organ harvesting is not going to, they're not going to show you, it's not 60 minutes. They're not going to come and show you, hey, this is what we're doing, this is how it's going. I'm talking to people that are inside the belly of the beast, that are hunting children down to save them, to going after organizations that go after the giant.
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
This is happening in America. It's undeniable.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative.
Mr. Moore.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, welcome. You know, before my time, I understand that this committee had 3 hearings on lost children under the Trump administration. At that time, it was only 1,000 lost children. And if I remember correctly, there was a certain member, and I won't give her name, but her initials are AOC, put on a white suit and went to the border to protest this 1,000 lost children. And now, my friend, the New York Times, actually, this is not a Republican rag, by the way. I reported in February of 2023, HHS had lost over 85,000 unaccompanied children. And my question to you is, as this process continues, I think you're in over your head. I think the administration has buried you. I don't think there's any way you can keep track of what's going on the southern border, and we're losing children by the droves. And when you talk about background checks, how is it that one individual could get 20 children? How does that happen, Mr. Secretary?
Congressman, thanks for the question. Actually, I think I heard 2 questions there. The first is on lost, 85,000 lost kids. Again, not answering a phone call, that does not mean a child is
Secretary,
lost.
let me tell you something. If my wife calls one of my kids, and on about the second call, we don't know where that child is, it is pandemonium around the Moore household. And I got news for you. When you're losing children to the tune of 85,000, there are parents somewhere in this world, and I don't know where the parents are, that are sending these children here for some reason, and they're being trafficked. They've been used for child labor. And again, this is the New York Times. This is not a Republican talking point. This is not a Republican rag. This is the New York Times talking about the mismanagement of this administration of these children and how we've lost them. And so my question to you is, how does one sponsor get 20 children? If we're background checking, in fact, how does that happen?
Congressman, every sponsor must go through a background check process. Every sponsor must be able to show.
Mr. Secretary, what if they're a foreign national? Are you background checking if they're foreign nationals? Is it possible that MS-13 is bringing their people across the border and taking custody of these children and putting them into trafficking and other unspeakable sort of things? Is that possible?
Remember, I mentioned in my opening testimony that the vast majority, 80, 90% of the kids that we place are placed with the parent.
If you're not doing bioidentical, if you're not identifying these people biometrics, how do you know they're the parents?
So there are many ways to provide or to prove identity. You can look at citizen.
So they can prove identity to take custody of children, but not to vote. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So you're saying voter ID doesn't need to be required. There's no way to verify somebody's identity. But if they're going to take custody of a child in a foreign country, you're saying they do have an ID or they need to have an ID.
You said voter ID?
Yeah, what I'm saying, in other words, is you're requiring ID for these people supposedly to take these children, but then you say, many times on the left, they say, well, you know, voter ID is racist or discriminatory. So explain to me, how is it that you're verifying the ID of these people if they don't have IDs and nobody can get IDs?
Thank you for the question. Identity documents are one of the many tools that we use to try to ascertain the relationship of the child with the potential sponsor. But there are many other things that we'll do. If there's a sponsor that has not provided sufficient identification and proven that tie to the child, we can turn to things like fingerprinting if we need to.
So you think this person that got these 20 children is related to all 20 of those kids? Is that what I'm hearing, or?
What I can tell you again is that every sponsor must go through a vetting process in order to be able to sponsor any child.
But if they're a foreign national, we do vet those people as well, or?
Anyone who wishes to apply to sponsor a child must go through the process. If they decline to go through the process, they cannot sponsor.
Well, earlier one of the members mentioned that a certain sponsor had kids delivered to different addresses. How do y'all cross-reference that? How do you justify that?
I'm not familiar with any case that you're referencing, but what I will tell you again is when we
That was a Florida grand jury case, by the way.
When we go through the background checks, we ascertain any number of things, including residence, where the child will be placed. We check on the household members in that place as well, in the home. So we go through the process of not only vetting sponsors, but we also check with those members in the household.
So in the Florida grand jury case where the one child was delivered to the strip club, did y'all vet that? location? I mean, was that considered a house? I mean, is a strip club now considered a house for children being trafficked or lost?
As I mentioned, Congressman, we can discuss the Florida report. There are many issues that we have with that report.
Let me ask you a real quick question. I'm going to change subjects real quick. And many of the members have mentioned it, the Kayla Hamilton case, where Mr. Martinez, he came across as an unaccompanied child and then ended up killing Ms. Hamilton. How many UACs, unaccompanied children now, do we have in secure facilities? Are you housing in secured facilities? Do you know?
We use secure facilities if we don't believe that we can manage the children or keep the children that they would be around safe, or perhaps even for the safety of the individual. I don't have that number. I can take that back to my team.
Yeah, we'd be curious to know that. I'm kind of trying to figure out how in the world I had this situation in one of my areas where a young lady was raped by a 31-year-old that identified as an unaccompanied child, and he came to this country and then drug a 14-year-old girl into a restroom and raped her, and yet he was identified as a child, and I don't know how you understand like a 31-year-old. How do y'all identify that as a child? Is there any test on age when the kids come here? Do you get any documentation on birth certificates, anything like that?
As you're going to many of the documents and the ways that we try to ascertain not just the child's identity, but also get back into the background of anyone who wishes to sponsor.
How does a 31-year-old identify as a child?
Gentleman's time has expired.
I yield
Ms.
back.
Ross.